Hello and welcome back to another episode of You Want to Do What with Dan and Julie. Today we have Greg Sikora on, who is an acoustic engineer. Hi, Greg.
Hello. Hi.
How are we? Yes, I'm good. And you?
I'm good. Thank you.
So whereabouts in Germany are you based?
I'm in Munich, or north of Munich to be precise, in Garching, in the office right now, actually.
Oh, you're in the office. Well, we're in
Yes.
lockdown in the UK. So how are you going into lockdown or?
Well, technically, we are also getting into lockdown in Germany right now. But the specifics of my job and my team, we have to be in the office, so we are granted the permission to be in the office as we work physically on the cars, and remote work doesn't work.
So what's the company you work for then, Greg?
I work for Harman International.
And what does it specialize in doing?
So I'm in the automotive division in car audio specifically, and I'm heading the department called Acoustic Systems Engineering. I'm responsible for Europe. And what we do, as you may have heard, Harman develops sound systems in the cars for the OEM application. So we develop systems in the production process together with the car, and then when you are configuring your new car, you can select an option. For example, you would like to have a JBL system, Harman Kardon system, Bang & Olufsen system, for example. So basically, my team is designing these systems, choosing the components like speakers, amplifiers, DSP technologies. And at the end, we are tuning the systems, and then it goes into production.
Wow.
So it's a sound system design for automotive in general.
So acoustic engineering, how did you get into that?
Well, acoustic engineering in general, well, it started with music. I grew up in a family with a musical background. Basically everyone in my family was either a professional musician or amateur musician. So I was introduced to music very early in the age. Actually, I don't even remember when I started playing an instrument. And at the beginning was a kind of, trying something out. Then it turned into a professional education. So I am a professionally trained pianist.
Oh, wow.
Started at the age of 6 and finished at the age of 18. I mean, I'm still playing, but no, I'm not taking classes anymore. So the music was always there, but at the same time, I liked math and physics and wanted to somehow combine it. I knew that I have to do something that is connected to music, and I quickly learned acoustic engineer, sound engineering, and already as a teenager, I was playing with computer audio. I had a tape recorder recording all sort of weird sounds around me, and that led to the university. So that's basically how it started.
So you went to university and you just studied, is it acoustic engineering, or do you specialize once you've studied engineering in general? How did it work for you?
Oh, yeah, that's a long story. I spent 7 years at universities.
Wow.
So my first degree, I studied at the University of Technology in Gdańsk, Poland. And this is that was basically a general electronics, telecommunications, computer science department. So kind of general studies for the first 3 years, with a focus on electronics. And then the last 2.5 years of the university was more specialized on multimedia systems, on audio engineering. So this is where I started learning basically professional knowledge about audio and acoustics, and this is also when I started to work in the industry. Okay. I mean, at the beginning, some simple jobs, just being in the studio, making sure that the main sound engineer gets enough coffee and all the all the cables are prepared for with the microphones. But that's how you usually start in the music industry.
Definitely.
And then then I was getting more and more responsibility, doing some simpler recordings, then more complex recordings, then work in the broadcasting, in the TV and radio.
Oh wow!
So this is how it started. It's kind of studying and working at the same time. And then when I was done with this, my first degree, I was also involved in the organization called Audio Engineering Society, AES, probably the oldest and largest society for audio engineers in the world. And I met people there, and who told me that about the other aspect of audio engineering, that it's not only technical stuff, there is also musical stuff. There is something, people that call themselves tonmeisters or music producers, balance engineers. So more artistic approach to sound engineering. And I got really curious because I thought, well, I have this technical background. I also have musical background. I played piano many years. I mean, I studied music theory and everything.
Wow.
So why not try to get to one of these universities? And the one I found was McGill University Sound Recording, a 2-year master's program. It was not easy to get in. They are pretty selective. I think back in 2008 when I started was 6 of us for each year. I have to say I was really lucky to get through all the interviews. Through my portfolio was pretty good. Yeah. And then I got in.
So was there anything that helped you to stand out during that interview process to get into the course?
I think the faculty, first of all, they appreciated that I already have a professional experience because I started quite early. My musical education was a requirement. So I think it was a combination of the professional experience and probably a passion that I displayed on these interviews, because for me the audio, acoustics, sound engineering, music, it's basically what I do in my life. I cannot imagine doing anything else. Yeah. So maybe that helped, this passion element that I was able to transfer during these interviews. And
so where can you apply this skill set once you've got your master's degree or whatever it be within acoustic engineering? Where can you then apply that?
So this is, one industry, and this is where I started, is the music industry. Yeah. So this is where you are in the recording studio or in the broadcasting studio, and then you work with artists, with musicians, to create music, commercials, anything that is connected with audio and sound. Mm-hmm. So this is a typical path, and this is where I was at the beginning kind of located. But it's I have to say, especially these days, it's a difficult job because there's pretty much no fixed employment. Right, okay. Most of sound engineers are freelancers, and then you're just going from one project to another. Mm-hmm. It is fun because it's always an adventure. Yeah. But it can be quite stressful at times. Mm-hmm. And the other industry is basically you go into either consumer electronics, where you develop, for example, loudspeakers and other audio products, headphones, mm-hmm. or you might go into automotive. And also in automotive, you can work for NVH department, so working with car acoustics in general. with the more like vibration element of the acoustics, how much noise is getting into the car, how to tame that noise, how to control that noise. So it's more, I would say, hardcore acoustics. You're not working with sound, you're working with acoustics. And the other part is more this entertainment part where I am, and this is building sound systems for OEMs.
Wow.
And there's more. You can go into architectural acoustics, so building sound systems for spaces, live sounds. So this is where you it's sound, public address, sound reinforcement. So making music at the concert venue. So there's quite a lot of options, but it's quite competitive, I have to say.
Yeah, I suppose if there's employment is on freelance basis for most acoustic engineers or audio engineers, then there's going to be a lot of competition to get those jobs, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what is an average day like for yourself in the current role you're doing?
Well, I'm in a management role right now, so it's very different to what I was doing as an engineer. So, I mean, for me personally, I spend a lot of time on meetings, which is normal. Designing the systems, discussing the issues, meetings with the team, solving problems, and just also pure administration. But I do spend quite a lot of time on designing the system, so being more as an architect at the early phases of the project.
So, and what's it like an average day for the engineers that work for you? What are they doing every day?
This depends on which stage of the projects they are. A typical development time frame for a sound system in the car, it's anywhere from 5 to 3 years. And at the beginning of the project, the engineers are more focused on creating the architecture, making sure that the components that we have selected or we are about to select are meeting our specification. You can imagine there is a different specification for a small car with for example, JBL system, and different specification for a top-level BMW with a Bowers and Wilkins system.
Yeah.
So we also need to manage that. Basically, it's a product design.
Yeah.
Apart from the sound quality targets, we of course have to design the product for a specific target cost. That's like in any engineering branch.
Yeah.
So the engineer, if we are starting about in the project, then acoustics engineers are involved in the architecture, making sure that the system, from the system perspective, we are meeting all the requirements, and the product that we are designing basically on paper will achieve a certain performance. So this is, let's say, at the start, maybe the first year of the development. Then later on is more following the development. There will be always some issues, some changes, and we have to make sure that the changes are not impacting acoustical performance or impacting the acoustical performance in a minimal way. And for that, for example, engineer might have to run specific simulations. Sometimes we have to build a proof of concept to basically prove or research some potential issues, because there are some problems we basically don't have prior experience to. Well, we need to try it out on some, basically building a proof of concept stage. So when we have the whole system already defined, all the issues are solved, then we get the first prototype of the car around 12 to 18 months before the start of the production.
Oh, wow.
So we have the first prototype. It's still not the final car, but it already looks like a car. And then we have also our components, our loudspeakers and amplifiers built in, so we can perform the first tuning. And tuning is basically like bringing the whole system together to create the acoustical illusion, to create. It's a bit like cooking. We have all the components, the potatoes, meat, vegetables, and now we need to bring it together according to our recipe, add some spices, and basically make a dish out of it.
That's a great way to describe it.
So this is the tuning, and this process repeats a couple of times. Then we get a car prototype that is more advanced, closer to a final product. Our components also matured during that time, and we do another loop, and typically also the last loop on the production car, and that also involves driving. We have to make sure that the sound system also has maintains the performance while we are driving at different speeds, different conditions. And when we are done, then that basically gets replicated tens, hundreds, millions of times, and goes on the market.
That must be a really cool feeling to have had an impact. I mean, because at Harman you work on some massive car brands. It must be so fun to get the prototypes in and put your work into it, and know that your work's going all around the world.
I have to say that this is one of the coolest parts, and I really sometimes get goosebumps when I talk about it, because it's such a fantastic feeling when you see a car with your system, someone in the car driving in that car, enjoying your system, listening to music, and then you remember a time a couple of years back when that system was basically on the whiteboard for the first time.
Yeah, that is cool.
And typically the acoustic engineers are the ones who are following the whole project. Other engineering disciplines, they are involved in a specific time in the project. Well, they design a component. And acoustics engineering, or we call the acoustic systems engineering, because we engineer the whole system. We are from the very early beginning to the launch of the product. And you can really learn a lot during the process. I'm learning every day, and this is what motivates me to get up every day and come here, even during the lockdown.
That's so cool. And you must see some really, really cool prototype cars, very, very early doors before anyone has, really.
Yes. At the beginning, they're typically not so pretty. There's a lot of loose cables hanging, parts are not finished. Sometimes we receive a car for tuning basically that doesn't have any seats inside, and well, that's a problem because we cannot really do the tuning when there is no seats. But there's a lot of funny stories that I could tell about some incidents.
I bet
that happened.
So we've had quite a few engineers on, actually. We had the director of the Royal Academy of Engineering on a couple of weeks ago, and we were just talking about personality traits for engineers. And he sort of described it as you have to be someone that just loves to solve problems and fix things and tinker with things. Does that fit your perception of an engineer's personality traits?
Yes, definitely. Basically, what we do all the time is solving the problems. And there is also, how should I put it, a certain amount of skin in the game for acoustic engineers.
Yeah.
Because we know that whatever shortcut we will make in the development process, and if this is a conscious shortcut or sometimes it's an unconscious shortcut, so basically a mistake that is overlooked, we know that it will impact the end result, and we are responsible for the end result.
Yeah.
But that kind of, there is the skin in the game element for us, and that's why, even though we are not the largest team, largest department in the organization, because you need, for example, many more hardware engineers to build an amplifier.
Mm.
But each member, each engineer in my team, they have this passion and this almost, we are very inquisitive. I mean, asking a lot of questions, and then sometimes I don't know. I don't want to say that we are disliked, but sometimes we are annoying other engineers because we want answers, because we know if we don't get to the bottom, if we don't know exactly how it's done, it's going to impact the acoustics later on, and it will impact it at the stage where we cannot change it anymore. It will be simply too late. So there is this passion is one thing, but it's also this skin in the game element that also drives us for perfection.
I suppose, some other engineers can, if they've done something different on a building, they can kind of change it and move the way they do things. But for you, if the audio sounds different, there's no hiding from it, is there? People will hear it.
Yeah, I mean, the end result is the end result. So basically, in the tuning process, this is a sum of the whole development that we are given, and then we have to build something from it.
I guess we've already touched on this next bit, but what would be the biggest positive or the biggest opportunity you've had through this career?
So yes, what we mentioned is this ability to be involved in the whole project, from pre-development to the first quotation to the customer, ideation on the system, through the development and the final product. That's certainly rewarding. And the other fun part, I mean, we work with music.
Yeah,
so what can be better than that?
Very cool. And on the other hand, what's maybe something that's less favorable about your working in the industry?
What is less favorable?
It could be long hours or something like that.
It is definitely long hours, specifically in the last stage of the project, because sometimes we have, I mean, often or always limited amount of time to finish, for example, a tuning, and if something doesn't go right, well, the end date doesn't shift, and that's basically the last stage.
Yeah.
So we just have to do it. Sometimes engineers have to travel around the world because the customers cannot ship the cars to our location, to our labs. Then we have to go to their labs, and the conditions are different. I've been in a project where basically we work during the night shifts.
Wow.
And tuning the cars during the night hours is difficult because you rely on your senses. But that was the only time where the cars were available at the customer side. So there's a lot of tensions, stress related, especially in the last phase of the project. And the other part is that you know that basically the final sound quality, it's all about the details.
Yeah.
And each engineer is trying to catch all the details and make sure that the details are done right. But if you work with the team that is sometimes spread around the world, sometimes you don't know what you miss. So sometimes it's just this fear of unknowns. Yeah. And you're just thinking about it. Am I missing something? Maybe I should talk to this guy, how this will be done, and then so on, because this is the skin in the game component that you want to make sure that everything will be done according to, the best practices.
Yeah, definitely.
And
so is there something that you wouldn't necessarily think of, but you do every day, something that wouldn't be in the job description, but something that you have to deal with?
There's a lot of negotiation, communication, dealing with different cultures. I think this is a bit underestimated in the job description, because we typically, we are looking for acoustic engineer, but acoustic engineering is the core of what we do. But you need to be just a good people's person. Especially if you, for example, work on the tuning, and then you have your customer. It's like working with the artist in the studio. And I remember from my studio days, I was sometimes amazed, like, how come I knew one engineer, and I knew one of the most brilliant engineers that I ever worked with. He had so much knowledge, and I was wondering why he's not getting the projects. And there was another engineer who was a good engineer, and he had lots of projects, lots of so-called gigs, albums, recordings, and so on. And it was about the personality, that the other person, even though that he wasn't the best engineer in the world, he could make a very comfortable atmosphere in the studio. He knew how to make them comfortable during the mixing, that he's giving them the best results that is possible. It's the same in this industry. We work with the customer. We have our brands that we need to protect, but at the end, we are building a system into a Volvo, into Audi, into BMW. And there is also a counterpart, an acoustic engineer on their side. And we need to make sure that his vision is also transferred. It's his car at the end, but also the vision of our brand is transferred into the final, let's say, sound signature. So there's that element of dealing with people, negotiation, and dealing with characters, of course.
So have you got any, advice for anyone who's listening to this and thinking, oh, actually, I'd love to be an acoustic engineer? Is there anything extra they could do while they're at university, or could they maybe do some of their own little projects or anything like that?
I would say if you want to be specifically go into the automotive industry and build and tune systems, then start building systems. I mean, if you have an old car, then put some speakers inside and just learn what kind of components are getting into the system. Learn about basics about the amplifier, about the speakers, and how do they interact with the car acoustics, the vehicle acoustics to get the feeling for it. And if you don't have a car, then build your own speaker. Take the wooden box, design it, make choose the driver, shape the volume around it, and just learn about the real world interactions. There's a lot in the books, but nothing will substitute the real experience. And typically when I'm hiring engineers, education is very important. But I typically choose engineers that have this experience. And if it doesn't have to be a work experience, it can be say, hey, okay, someone tells me I just graduated, I didn't work in the industry, but I built myself 5 speakers, and it's showing me the photos of the speakers, and we talk, okay, how did you design the speakers? And I already get a feeling, okay, this guy's into it. He knows what he's talking about. He has a good background, and he did something apart from the normal university program. That means he has a passion.
Yes,
at the same time.
And he's showing you that he's or he or she is ambitious, and they want to do it, and they've gone out of their way to do extra things, right?
Yeah, exactly. And this is what I wanted to add. Like people see many years in this job is simply because of the passion. In my team, I have engineers who are working 20, 25 years in this industry, basically doing, I don't want to say doing the same, because each project is different. Different set of challenges. And after 25 years, they still get surprised about things. But they typically, if you're in acoustics, in sound, you stay in acoustics and in sound. It's because it's simply a passion that you have.
And would you still go into the world of acoustic engineering now?
Yes.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
The element I like is first of all the music, and also the whole science behind it. And then you need to balance the art with science, with sometimes you're balancing facts with perception, and it's just amazing. It's super complex. That's what makes it exciting. You learn every day.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Greg. It's been a real pleasure to chat with you and find out all about acoustic engineering.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Good.